Good morning, folks. My name is Sally Ann Teetsworth, and I am Business Development Manager here for DDS. Thank you for coming aboard today. We're going to be having I would call interactive discussion on cybersecurity. And as David has nicely put in there, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We're here to, give you some points, if you will, on what to look for. And believe it or not, there's a question I'm going to ask you guys, and whoever can answer, I'll give a $25 gift card. So basically what it is, what would you determine when a cyber attack occurs? Where is it coming from? Okay, think about it for 5 minutes, and then we'll let David ask that question again. All right, David, take it away.
All right. All right. Hello, everybody. First, I kind of wanted to just start out with, a big thank you to the Chamber of Commerce letting us put this on. We're just going to kind of go over, like Sally said, a number of things related to cybersecurity and the costs that can be generated from that, because information is definitely what's going to help you with that. So big thank you to Debbie and Katie for, having this put together for us. Introduction. So myself, I'm David Whitaker with Decisive Data Systems, and then my co-speaker, James Knapp, is with PSA Insurance and Financial Services as their technology cyber insurance specialist.
So we're going to go through the agenda quickly. We'll start with what you're up against, the most common attacks, the industries that are most affected by these attacks. We'll walk through an example of an attack, how layered security can help you to resist an attack, the cost of one of these breaches, and then hopefully you guys will take advantage of the Q&A session that we end up with. So what you're up against, a 2019 Verizon report found that 41% of cyber attack victims were small to mid-sized businesses. That may be a conservative number. Some Chubb data you can see here that they actually put that at a bit higher, up to 60% of small to mid-sized businesses were the ones suffering these attacks.
So most common attacks that we've been seeing in the industry is email phishing. So let's kind of go over some of these common attacks and just kind of talk about them a little bit and put some real world examples. So email phishing, probably one of the most common. These are those fake emails, which can be used in different ways. Typically, you would identify these with people trying to create a sense of urgency in their email. You're probably most familiar with these because you probably see them coming through your email the most frequent. Next would be your social engineering. This one is getting more and more advanced as time goes on. So you have situations where people are reaching out via LinkedIn. They're using other social media platforms. What they're looking to do is make a connection with you so that when they actually do send you something, you'll actually click on it and activate whatever the case may be. We've seen this even in larger scale. We've seen this in hiring and recruiting having a problem where recruiters, quote unquote, are reaching out to people saying, hey, here's the job description. It may come in as a PDF on, through LinkedIn, or they get your email address and they send that to you. And then suddenly you're giving them a hole inside of the network. We've also seen this in the grounds of, in fact, I have a law firm that suffered from this. When your website, at this point has a lot of information, your LinkedIn information is out there. And if you think about it, they can use this information to target emails against specific people in the company. So if they know, let's say James is the CFO and I'm the president of the company, if they make it look like I'm sending him an email that says, hey, I need to have a wire transfer done to this company or whatever the case may be, this may actually trigger him to do something if he's not paying attention to it. In fact, I've had a company do this where exactly that same scenario, and the chief financial officer, she received the email and sure enough had to wire $30,000 out. And in fact, the bank tried to prevent it, and she ended up actually going to the bank to trigger this event. Obviously, once you've kind of gone down that path, it's a little hard to sometimes get that money back. Man in the middle, this one we're seeing evolve a lot more. This method can be perpetrated via a number of methods. The most recent ones that we're seeing is they're, getting in between your communications and using different methods to kind of see what is occurring. So an example of this that I've seen in the real world is a company, they're selling, in this case, they were selling a very large, expensive item. One of their accounts had been breached. They weren't necessarily aware of it, but as this person was monitoring their email, this transaction is occurring. And all they needed to do was at the right time have the email that was received be slightly altered, so that way it said, here's the account to wire the money to. And then $100,000 went out the door in that case. And this all has happened just from them having breached the account and really sitting there. And we're seeing this as a very common trend is you may get breached and not even realize that you've been breached, because that's typical for them to wait, expand, see other information that they can find. So let's go into credential stuffing attacks. So this is more of what you've heard in the news. Another large, dump of information is now on the dark web. Credential lists. Basically, what happens is you've got these credential lists after, let's say LinkedIn was hacked or some other large organization. Basically, what they've received is your email and password. Well, in a lot of cases, if you think about it, think about the passwords that you use. Are you using the same password for a lot of your login accounts? Most people are. So in this instance, you've got a situation where they just need to take all of these lists, use automation, and attempt to breach other accounts that you may have. Maybe it's your work email. A lot of people do actually use their work email for a lot of personal activity. So if you have that email address, it's been released out there, and maybe your password is, or in fact, maybe it just happens to be the same one that you're using on your LinkedIn account, or whatever, social media that has been breached in the past. You've seen other large organizations get breached at their e-commerce level. And when this information gets released, you're basically running the risk of that password is now out there, and it's probably something that you use on a lot of things. So that's become probably one of the more prevalent. Just a classic password attack. This one in general is your situations where they're looking to brute force, or they're using common passwords. It's 2022, and surprisingly enough, people are still using password 1 as their password, or something very similar, just password, or maybe they're using something related to their name. And at this stage, with those types of email addresses and then your password, it's very easy for somebody to basically attempt over and over and over again with automation to attempt to log in. And sure enough, there's still plenty of people out there that it's not that hard to get through. And once they're in, they can, wreak a lot of havoc. The last one, you also probably hear this one the most, update. We're always telling people, make sure that we're running updates. Microsoft, of course, is always saying run updates. And you'd be surprised, pretty much everything at this point needs an update. Your cell phone should be getting updated. Even your devices at home should, make sure that you're running the update on things like that. Your work computers. In a business setting, you would want something that's handling some sort of patch management. You really don't want things to go further than 2 weeks for critical security updates. Even your websites for your organizations. A lot of companies are using WordPress and those plugins that are making things work in the background, or the Linux servers that it's all based off of. You're running into a big issue there. Even we see this probably the most I've seen for open vulnerabilities. You may have vendors who say, hey, I need, and this is going to get a little techie, but I need these ports open for your DVR system. You open up those ports and, everything seems like it's fine. But if you think about it, how often is that vendor coming back to make sure that the DVR system is getting updated? Well, vulnerabilities come out. They use that to be able to jump from your DVR system into other parts of the network. Or, we've seen it where a DVR system is suddenly acting weird, and sure enough, after looking at the logs, we can see that somebody had logged into it and using the command line levels of everything, it was trying to figure out how to get out of that device so that they can encrypt the rest of the network. The last one, probably hear this all the time, remote desktop protocol, RDP, is typically used. When that's open to the world, it is a huge vulnerability. My worst example that I have seen happen in a terrible "I told you so" kind of scenario, and they would tell you the same thing, is they were using a type of terminal server technology. Basically, everybody would be able to connect to this server. They did for years. Ultimately, it was at the level of decommission, and it was no longer really in use. Had the conversation of, okay, we should really go ahead and get this shut down. Left it open for a little bit longer, and sure enough, they got in. And this happened to be since it was a medical facility, but they had all of their locations, all of them got hit with ransomware. It was a huge expense. Basically, all of the machines in their entire company needed to be wiped, reloaded. All the servers needed to be completely wiped and basically restored from their backups. So it was a huge change. I think one of the biggest things to kind of understand with these attacks now is the people perpetrating this are not your 90s movie classic hacker that you see hiding in a basement, or being just what is that, the movie Hackers with Angelina Jolie. That's not what this is anymore. These are sophisticated groups that are running a business. They're after the money. That is all that it really matters. And honestly, in some instances, they're no different. It's show up 9 to 5, hang out by the water cooler. Hey, who are you hacking today? And that is becoming more and more prevalent. So I think that is really something important for everybody to understand.
All right, so the industries that the carriers are finding the most attacks in, as you can see, number one is professional services, which makes sense when you think about lawyers, accountants, consultants. The type of information that they have access to and possibly stored in their systems is going to be most of the times very confidential, very sensitive in nature. So when an attacker actually does get access to the system, they have more leverage in order to threaten you with as far as trying to get a ransomware payment out of you, or whatever their end goal may be for your data. Manufacturing, this is one that has been quickly rising over the last few years. There are some carriers that are no longer willing to even write manufacturing cyber insurance. They've just pulled out of the market completely. As you can imagine with that, if you shut down a manufacturing line for a week or more while it's being held hostage by the threat actor, that can cause some serious financial harm to that manufacturing company. And then the rest, obviously healthcare, you would almost think it would be a little higher, but healthcare, because they have to comply with HIPAA, they are, in general, they have kind of more secure systems than these others that might have larger lapses in their security. So next slide, please.
All right, this one, I love this slide. Really what I kind of want to walk you through is an attack and the different layers of how your network environment may be set up. So ransomware, in this case, we're just going to kind of go through the process of how it happens. In this example, we're using the Ryuk ransomware. It was a type of group that basically was deploying this method. We've seen it basically continue throughout all our ransomware actors. But let's kind of start it out with what's the first thing that happens. So first, you get a malicious email. Now we have the user who did not read the email. Maybe they think they were waiting for something, or they just lack the knowledge of how to keep themselves safe. Maybe there's just a trust factor. Maybe they read that urgency and felt, oh, I need to do something with this. What happens next is you're going to see that the user clicks on it. So this is where that malicious email came in, and then the user clicks on it. What triggers then is a PowerShell is called. So after this user has clicked on, say, the attachment, and in the background, what's happening is it's calling a PowerShell script, which triggers an install. So let's look at that. So our install, it's going to reach out from a payload server. This is basically a server that's ran out there on the internet by the malicious actor, and it's going to pull down and install malware onto the system. From there, they're going to download what's known as TrickBot. These were prevalent, especially in banking, but using the technology, they've been able to kind of expand on that pretty heavily. And then from there, they're going to persist. So the TrickBot, what its function is to allow them to start to spread. They want to move around your network, gather information, infect other devices. They're going to laterally move around. So ideally, what they're looking for is the maximum amount of devices that they can encrypt. So that way you are more held hostage to their ransom. And then finally, basically, when the TrickBot is going to run, that's kind of like the final stages of pulling down the ransomware and encrypting. So now you just had everything get encrypted, and now you're seeing on all of your screens, hey, pay X amount of Bitcoins to have your stuff, reach out to this email address, or download this Tor browser, which is a special type of browser that allows you to reach out to different parts of the internet that aren't as prevalently accessible through like Google or that kind of thing. So from that, as you can see, this all happened from really just an email came in and a user clicked, and then everything else. So what can we do about it? Let's look at why the change is necessary for a lot of the security. So right now, if you're looking at today's what people were doing in the past. You had your traditional antivirus on the device. Hopefully, you were doing the patch management for updates. You had your endpoint firewall. So in this case, think of the Windows firewall that's running on your computer. And maybe you were doing URL filtering. So maybe you were just preventing people from, going to this website or that kind of website, or possibly not even at all. But honestly, today we need to make a big change. One of the biggest changes that we need to do starts with the AV. Traditional AV, we want to switch out with what's known as EDR, endpoint detection and response. This has been a major game changer for the security industry, as it is designed specifically around protecting you and preventing ransomware. So how this technology works is that instead of it being an AV, that is kind of using what we call basically lists, like known problems. Basically, everything gets compiled and the AV system is looking for it. Most EDRs are a type of AI driven. It is looking at every process that your computer does and is looking for things that are strange. And then it does include a new recoverability that gets added. So that response part is a little bit of an option to roll back. So let's say your devices got encrypted. It got past the EDR as far as like a first portion. It still has an ability to flip back prior to the ransomware event, which is a huge change for everybody. The next one would be, let's look at your internet level. So at the internet level, you have mail protection or email security gateways, basically. Adding in this extra layer. So let's say you're on Office 365 or G Suite Workspace, that kind of thing. You want something that the email gets pointed to first, and at that level, maybe it's doing URL redirection. You would want to see some sandboxing occur, and then you would want to basically have that email get kind of checked there and then delivered to your email system itself. Which is basically going to really kind of help things out. Instead of just an endpoint firewall, let's switch that up. Let's add in advanced firewalls. That's a physical device there at basically the edge of your computer network. So you're there in the office, Comcast, Verizon, Armstrong, whoever it may be, you have their device, and then it's going to get plugged into this device. With that, you're going to get a whole new layer of protections there in the office, secure web gateway. You're kind of indicating what people can and can't do out on the web. So that's going to be a huge change. Obviously, today it's getting a little trickier with advanced firewalls. There are solutions out there for all of your, let's talk about your laptops that are, people are now taking home, work from home. There are solutions now to bring that same type of technology and that web protection with them. As we were kind of looking at that previous attack, the next thing, once it kind of got in there, it started to persist on the network, and it laterally moving around. You want to have something that's kind of monitoring this network activity and looking for those anomalies. Another big thing that would help people at the people level is the password management. So your companies now are providing their users with a type of password management. It's very similar to what you see in your Edge or Chrome, that you're saving the passwords. Basically, the idea is that you can make the password far more complicated. It can be different from your other passwords, and you're securely saving them. The ones that are basically built into the computer are one way. There are other solutions for businesses to where they can provide that for their company. And that way they can also control, when staff leave or join, that they would be able to see the company passwords that are necessary, but at the same time securely control them. Another thing at the kind of the people level is multi-factor. You probably heard this a number of times, 2FA, multi-factor. Adding in this extra layer at that point really cuts out a lot of the middlemen options. It prevents people from doing a lot of those password attacks, because as they're attacking, your phone would go off and say, hey, are you logging into something? And if you're driving to the grocery store, obviously that's not you. Deny. Another thing that application controls. Application control and vulnerability management. So these are getting a little bit more advanced, but you're talking things like, if you remember on that PowerShell script part that triggered, this would actually prevent something like that from happening. It would, basically are you allowed to do this? Should you be doing this? You're basically indicating what users can and can't do, whether or not they can and can install things, and what those programs can and can't access. Obviously it comes with a few more, changes in work style and that kind of thing related to, it's not the Wild West of your business company workstations, but it's certainly a huge change on preventing. The vulnerability management, as you can imagine, performing vulnerability scans, knowing that, there's always a change. There's most likely going to be a vulnerability. It's just being aware of it and working to prevent it. Next, let's look at the backup solutions. So down here at the bottom, you see that, recoverability has really changed. So everybody should have a backup. If you weren't already doing a backup, definitely address that right away. EDR adds that additional rollback. Now they've added automated testing. And obviously for some businesses, a standby system may be something that you're looking for. Honestly, one of the last things that I would really push for everybody is user training on the people. You've seen, requests for that at the phishing level, basically simulate sending fake emails to your staff, see if they click on them, have conversations with it, schedule trainings where it's just, even simple modules that some of these platforms provide can teach somebody in small 5-minute increments. And we've seen that gets retained far better than, obviously don't bring them into like a boardroom setting and say, okay, we're going to have an hour-long cybersecurity training. That's not going to help anybody. And all of this is just additional layers on your path towards the final security of today, basically.
All right, so here's some material about the cost of a claim, how much it would actually affect your business if you were to suffer an attack. The first graphic on the left kind of shows that the other first-party costs the main impact to your business is going to be your inability to do work. So if they shut you out of your system for a week, a month, maybe even longer, obviously that's going to severely impact your ability to make revenue. The other part of that is kind of the reputational harm piece. So if you do suffer an attack and the media gets wind that all of your clients' data has been released onto the dark web, say the Baltimore Sun comes out with an article that talks about that attack, that's another thing where other companies or clients are going to be hesitant to do business with you if they feel like their data is not secure on your end. So the average paid incident costs, this is a really powerful graphic. You can see that, when the carrier is responding to these events, they do end up paying a considerable amount of money to get these issues rectified. Forensics costs, you can imagine hiring a professional to come in and do the research to figure out how the breach occurred, close up any of those vulnerabilities that they took advantage of. Those experts cost a lot of money. So the carrier handles that on their own. They'll hire, they have third-party businesses that they have on call to respond to these types of events on their behalf, on your behalf. So you kind of just step back and let the experts do their work. Next slide, please. So these are the things that we would like to see in place from the insurance side of things. When I go to quote like a new business cyber insurance policy, the carrier is going to ask us, several questions. I'm sure everyone's gone through an application process for other types of insurance. The cyber application process is only getting more and more complicated as the years go by. As the threat actors get more savvy, the carriers are trying to keep up and make sure that all of their insureds have the proper controls in place before they're willing to write coverage for them. So the first one, the email security gateway, they want to see that all incoming emails, all outgoing emails are being scanned for malicious activity. The endpoint detection and response, like David spoke on, that's one of the most important ones that we're seeing as a requirement for most carriers these days. And along with that, they would like to see that not only installed on all of your endpoints, like your computers in the office, but they want to see some sort of application also installed on, say, employees' mobile devices. If they're accessing the network, or if they're using their business email through their, personal device, which a lot of us do, the carrier is going to want to see that you have some protection installed on that mobile device as well. The cloud backup rule, this is one that it's kind of a common IT requirement where they just recommend that you create a primary backup and then 2 copies of that data. So that's the 3 section of it. They want you to save that to 2 separate types of media. So, you might have an on-site hard drive that it's saved to, but then you also have an off-site cloud backup solution. And then that's the 1 section they want to keep. You want to keep 1 of those copies off-site. So again, a cloud provider is the most common way to accomplish that. They just want to see that if your office were to suffer like a fire or a flood, that you would still be able to access that data. As David mentioned too, the email phishing training. So those are, I'm sure some of you have them in place, but you'll receive just a testing email where they'll pretend to be, Amazon offering you a refund. They'll pretend to be the CEO that needs you to go out and purchase Apple gift cards. Whatever the case may be, we found that when you regularly receive those types of fake phishing attempts, it does train the employees to recognize, detect, and report those emails as malicious. And it can decrease successful phishing attempts by up to 40%. The final one is that multi-factor authentication. We have it here for remote access. So if you do have remote access enabled on the network, the carrier wants to see that you have multi-factor authentication in place for that. Email, for just logging into your email, they want to see MFA there as well. and then network administrators or privileged users. So anyone who does have access to your system and has the ability to make changes to, say, your security protocols, they should have a separate multi-factor authentication requirement that every time they access the network, they have to satisfy. The multi-factor authentication one, again, when we're talking about employee devices, that's a common loophole that a lot of clients don't think about. But when you complete an application, if the carrier is providing coverage for those employees' devices, they do have to comply with all these same requirements that you're answering. Say, yes, you have EDR, yes, you have multi-factor authentication. The carrier wants to see that on the mobile device as well. All right, next slide.
All right. So what does all this mean? On here, I have the Nist framework. It's basically, if you notice, it's a giant wheel. Once you kind of start this process, it honestly, it's a lot of it is about starting the process. You're not going to create all of these security layers tomorrow. Most of these pieces you're going to have to, identify. You're going to have to implement them. You're going to have to see what works. You're going to have to see how the workflow in the company changes, and then adjust and move forward. And each piece of the layer, maybe you only accomplish one or two things in this year, and then next year it's like, okay, we're finally let's go ahead and approve doing this, and this. It's really about building on these layers to protect the system. And what we're kind of seeing, obviously, everybody's kind of watched the news and stuff like that. At this point, it's like I said in the beginning, it's not a matter of when, it's if. So, or it's not an if, when, but you're just building on this. But it's okay to start somewhere. Start somewhere. Pick a piece and tackle it with your IT professional. If you don't have cybersecurity insurance, I highly recommend that you do that. They'll help also direct you on additional things that you may need. And this goes for all sizes of companies, whether you're a company of 10 employees or a company of 100 or 1,000 employees. All of these pieces, you need those in place, and you just kind of have to figure out what it is that you need to prevent and identify these risks. So, and let's face it, you've seen it in the news. Most companies, even at the enterprise level, they don't have everything in place. I'm sure we could have all, we're grateful that it didn't last too long, but look at the pipeline issue. Nobody had gas. All of that came down to basically, a multi-factor on their VPN. That was it. So, all right. It's question time.
Talk about. Yeah. Okay, good.
Hello? Can you hear
Hello.
me?
Yep.
Okay, I received an email from Samsung telling me that they had a breach. How was that affecting me personally?
Gotcha. Yeah. So if you have a Samsung, or you've given them, let's say, at some point, we've all probably given away our email addresses. That had like a checkout, or maybe even like Best Buy or something of that nature. What could happen there is, now that that breach has occurred, I would recommend that you, one, take advantage of anything that you can related to credit monitoring, or just check with that. And then also change your passwords. If you know for sure that you have like a Samsung account of some kind, definitely you want to change that password. And if you're using that same password for other accounts, change it there too.
Okay, and then I have a second question.
Yeah.
What exactly is the dark web?
Yeah, so I should include a slide that kind of describes that. So the web, the internet as a whole, if you think about it, is really just when you go to google.com, it's basically kind of like calling somebody on the phone. It's pointing you to a certain direction. And all of those types of things are just servers that are all connected somewhere. When people say the cloud, all those pieces. When they're referring to the dark web, it's basically things that haven't been that aren't necessarily categorized, or they didn't, present some sort of DNS naming out there. That part where I said google.com points to, this phone number. So the dark web basically allows people to, using other types of browsers, to basically have websites that you don't even know that's there. And, things like Google aren't actually crawling them to present that kind of information to you. Think of it like you're looking at the ocean, and really all the websites that we interact with are all kind of at the surface, and you can see them. Dark web's all the websites that are hidden down below that we can't really see.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
I got 3 questions.
Yeah.
So my first question is, you mentioned password management. I personally use which was a KeyPass, but is there anything that DDS recommends for companies for like password management, or just like print out paper and having a list of their passwords?
Ooh, definitely nothing paper. Nothing paper. KeyPass is a good one. That basically you're looking at something that as a company level you can administer. And then you can take away the rights and give the rights for both, company ones. You want to be able to have security levels with it. So KeyPass, I believe, does have, I think that one has a professional level that adds some of those features. But there's other ones out there. We use one that's kind of related to our documentation system here that we can provide to our customers.
Awesome. My second question is, you mentioned doing test emails to like,
Yep.
Is that something DDS provides or provides a service for?
We do. So that one's actually, I love doing that testing. It is a lot of fun. And to be honest with you, the results that you really get, and as James I think pointed out, it has like 40% drop on that with people users. So I usually walk people through a process of, let's do a baseline. We send every employee out a fake email and we see who clicks it. That's just to get a baseline. We don't tell them anything about it. We don't, really do anything at the first level. And then from there, we provide like a type of add-on and some training on, hey, we're going to be sending you fake emails and we want you to be mindful and see. Just the fact that they have to be mindful of it greatly increases their chances of avoiding any of these phishing emails that are actually coming from, somewhere else. People have a tendency to, I've heard this before, pay attention to what the leader is looking at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but yes, it's a lot of fun.
And my last question is, we have a dedicated server without all our documents on it. And I mean, in the past, we were hacked and we lost a good chunk of it. Is there anything on our dedicated server side that we should be doing to protect it besides, because anyone in our office can access it if they're on the network. So am I making sense?
Yes. So typically when you have like a, let's say an S drive, it's the shared for everybody and they're accessing those files. There, in a lot of ways, there's not too much that you can do to get away from necessarily the privilege of, if it is working files that they need to access. So, user X, Y, and Z gets, hit with the initial part of it, and they do need to be able to access these files to actually do their job. Those are files that are, just in danger. One, I would definitely say backup daily, every night. So that way, at the worst case scenario, you're looking at only a single night. In the event that you had like an EDR, you could have rolled back in that scenario. I know we were talking about the workstations and mobile devices for EDR. Absolutely, it goes on the server. 100%. Even if you were twisting my arm, I would start with the server.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sally, any other questions?
I guess this is what I was gonna put in the chat. All right, so from the audience here, what is the number one cause for breach? Maybe you can find it better, but when does that occur?
When did it occur?
When, not when, how? From what
What
source?
country?
What source? What source?
What country were we
But you have an office over there. Anybody else?
in?
From within?
Sally, you're a bit far away. I'm just going to reiterate the question. Your
Okay.
question that you're posing was, what is the number one cause for a breach?
Yeah. What would you say?
Email.
Okay, close. It comes from with, yeah. Anybody get close to that question? No? When you're out surfing on the internet, when you're working, when you're supposed to be working.
Oh, no.
Okay. Okay, so I would say the breach comes from within. Would you agree, David? Is that?
Yeah, I would agree. If I were to give it a single one person answer,
Yeah,
it's the people.
it's the people internally. So all the more reason to educate your personnel.
Yep,
All the reason.
absolutely.
Yep. When you're at home surfing on the internet, you're the one that's going to bring it in.
No, friend.
Well, okay, your granddaughter, but it's coming from within.
Gotcha.
That's the question. Anybody close to that? Nobody wants this gift card? Come on. All right, we'll randomly pick it. Okay,
Yeah,
I have a question.
there we go.
absolutely.
A benefit we recently had the ability to access was from LifeLock. If we paid a monthly discounted payment to this company, they could help us monitor our personal computers and phones and I wasn't sure if it was worth it, A, and B, I was extremely uncomfortable telling a company all of our accounts and passwords. In my
Right.
opinion, now everything is in one place and that's even easily or a target for a hacker. So why am I giving all of that information to somebody to monitor? I couldn't decide if I wanted to pay that money, if it was a good value or not.
So when you say that they were going to monitor, like you were also providing them like your personal emails, basically things of that nature.
Email,
actual devices.
bank accounts, savings accounts, stock trade accounts, phone passwords, 2 or 3 computers,
Yeah,
Comcast.
yeah.
It was too much information that they were asking, and we started the process and we thought, we're giving them everything anybody could ever want.
Yeah. I
And
will
now-
say, I would also hesitate with, putting all of your eggs in the same basket.
Exactly.
Most of the things that we were kind of talking about, it's a layered approach, and honestly, you kind of want to have some separation between things.
Well, having said that, I've tried extremely hard to separate things, but a week or two later, somehow it's all connected.
Yeah.
And I'm not tech savvy at all, and I usually learn the hard way.
Yeah. It's amazing the power that's being driven with the technology at this point. I don't know if you've ever noticed even the fact that you would probably see ads related to something that you may have looked up at some point. They're
Or
using
even said out loud.
exactly. Because that information is just kind of floating out there, and sometimes it's not necessarily associated to you, but a lot of it is. Your browser is logged in, Google is, capturing this part. And as you go to somebody else's website, they're able to pull some of that information of, who you are and that kind of thing. So it does create a profile. And it is getting harder. I will admit it's getting harder to keep things separate. Some people use, kind of have some options where they try to have accounts that aren't necessarily like attached to their, phone, or, definitely keep your work stuff and your personal stuff as separate as possible. I know sometimes that actually gets tricky, and it gets me as well of, I go to type in my email for an account the first time, and my work email is actually what, auto fills, and I click next, not paying attention to it. And next thing you know, now my work email is now associated to, some personal account. Yeah.
And more businesses are asking you to pay online now.
Yeah.
They're not giving you the option to opt out. So
Yeah.
there's another account that's linked somehow to your personal, and it's getting harder and harder.
It really is. And so the best thing you can do is, when you hear about a breach, or if you do receive those letters, like I said, if you can have different passwords for different accounts, I know that can get very cumbersome. Don't put it in an Excel spreadsheet and save it on your desktop and call it passwords. Use like what was all brought up earlier, something like KeyPass or something of that nature. But even that's not foolproof. That doesn't necessarily mean that, something couldn't happen to KeyPass. And they're probably doing everything within their power to prevent things from happening as well. But it still can happen. So it's kind of just being as mindful as you can as you're, browsing these things, and keeping as much of some things, separate. And, I used to tell people this all the time: don't make it easy. That's probably one of the best things that you can do, is don't make it easy for the perpetrator to do these things. Try and make it as difficult as you can for them. So, because sometimes they'll just move on. It's easier to go for the easy ones. It's a lot less work. And for, especially at the company payday level, what we were talking about, if you have to pay a ransomware, I think the average, James, correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably like $40,000-$50,000.
Yeah, even higher.
Yeah. And
Okay,
then they
so now what happens if I pay LifeLock a monthly $35 payment, and then they get breached? Or I lose $50,000. Are they like the insurance company that you're talking about?
James, I'm going to pass that one to you.
Yeah, sure. Yep. So they would have their own separate insurance that would cover those types of claims. I'm sure a company of that size probably pays a hefty amount for their annual premium, but yes, they should have coverage in place if they release your sensitive data, and provide you with reimbursement for, how you were impacted.
All right, thank you.
I have one last question. Will this recording be recorded? I mean, will we have access to it?
Over to you, Katie. I believe so. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to transpire. Katie or Debbie, I'm sure we'll be posting it as, probably in some fashion, following this. All right. Any other questions? All right. Then I think I will go with thank you for everybody's time today. You can reach out to myself or James related to any questions and additional that you may have. And again, a big shout out to Debbie and Katie for letting us present today and answer some of your questions. And hopefully this was informative on some of the changes in the landscape. Start somewhere, take some informational courses. If there's anything that you can find, if you have other questions, feel free to reach out.
Great.
Okay, great. Thanks, David. Thanks, James.
Thank you
right.
all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
All right, we'll announce the $25 gift card on your site. Okay, we'll just do it that way.